You just file. So,
Okay.
and you can edit, of course. So yeah, I've got it recording. So this is my first Zoom interview meeting, not interview, really just hang out with, who do I have here?
Ed Eddinghausen, the Jester.
Obviously. And I've got a green screen of a photo I took of me and Ed somewhere. Don't even know
Do
what
you
race that
remember
was.
where that was? I remember that picture. We've done so many races together. I'm trying to figure out where it was. I can't tell by the photo, but I love that photo. That's awesome.
It being the dirt and it looks fairly smooth, it may, but then you're wearing short
I
sleeves.
am. I noticed that. So, it,
So it
is
couldn't
it?
be across yours because it's
I
always
was
so damn
thinking it
cold.
makes you up. You don't think? Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. Yeah, it's
Well,
kind of,
I love it because anybody who knows us,
yeah,
the homeless Santa and the Jester, the images that we both have.
most definitely. When I was doing a lot of playing poker and stuff, I made spreadsheets and do all kinds of stuff. In fact, I'm back playing a little bit of poker online. But I one time like thought, I wonder how many miles we have shared over the years. And I calculated out looking at just races, and I figured you did about 5,000 miles in races that I was at, and
Wow.
I did about 3,000.
That's a
So
lot of miles, my friend.
and that was a few years ago that I did that. But just kind of that you're going around me all those miles, and then of course hooking up later at night. Of course,
Yeah, and that's what those race miles don't tell is the story of what when we're together. A lot of times it's when we're going through the witching hours, 2, 3, 4 in the
mhm,
morning, when everybody else is getting sleep, and we're just out there grinding away and keeping each other from falling asleep. Yeah,
yeah,
those are some memories, my friend.
and of course Kelly Agnew is whizzing by us all those late
Of
nights.
course, yeah, good old Kelly, and when he wasn't in the porta potty, yeah.
No, but it's kind of funny. Like we never really thought about him back then. Cheating just didn't really cross our radar. And I often say that you probably didn't really think of him the same way I did. And it was he usually wasn't in our race.
No,
So you were in the 48 or 72, so you didn't really care what he was doing, and I didn't care either.
exactly. If
Yeah.
I'd have, because I'm very competitive, so if he'd have been
Yes.
in one of my races, I'd have been paying attention and I'd have known. Wait a minute, this guy is showing ahead of me
Yeah.
on the computer, but there's no way he's gotten ahead of me. I'd have made a
Yes.
speech about that, but we were never. If I was doing say a blue 72, he was doing the 48,
Yes.
or a jackpot, I was doing the 48, he was doing the 24.
Yeah.
ATY, he's doing 24, I'm doing 6 days. So no, we never were in that same race.
Yeah. Because we're both pretty observant of what's going on, and like I said, I lucked at it. In fact, it's kind of funny that like in 2016, I won the blue 48. And I was hyper aware of what was going on. That's how I won it, just by keeping track of everybody and only doing as many miles as I could to get the win. And then the following year was the year he got busted, before he got busted. And the only thing he said to me at that race is on the second morning, he ran by me and he says, "Andy." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Remember your course record? It's now mine." So
Uh,
that's the last thing I heard from him, was him telling me
but
that.
who had the laugh because they got stripped of him, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so it gave it back. Now, do you have the course record now for that, or someone else since
No,
then?
Brent, did
Oh,
the
that's right.
150. Yeah.
That's, oh, yeah. I remember that one quite well. That's a whole nother story we could get into, but maybe we shouldn't. So we'll move it forward.
And like I said, I mean, some of the crazy memories are kind of like that across years, where I remember one morning and you were like the 72, I'm the 48. And it's probably my second morning or third morning. And we're out there just cranking laps by ourselves. And we are kind of like those two rodents. I can't remember. No, after you, no, after you. We kept saying, okay, one more lap and we'll lay down and take a sleep. And then we'd go through and do another lap and then like, oh, let's go do another one. And then finally, like, we're like, it's 4 a.m. If we don't lie down in the dark and get some sleep, it's going to be stupid. And so
Yeah.
like after like doing an extra 6-7 miles or whatever, we finally went and took an hour and a half break. So
Yeah, that reminds me of, do you remember the scene in Titanic? The ship's going down, and there's the orchestra. They're out there on the deck playing
yes,
music for all the people. And then they're like, well, guys, been nice knowing you. And they start to pack up, and they're like, you know what? Let's just play some more. And so they'll play another couple songs, and they're ready to pack up. Like,
yeah,
no, we might as well play a little bit more. And so I think they went down playing on deck with the ship
yeah.
going down. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we had
kind of.
Had
When
many of those memories, and unfortunately, everything with all the craziness going on. Like I said, the last time I've seen you in person was at our Celtic race way back in January, which seems like a
yeah,
lifetime
and that
ago.
one didn't go well for me. I really struggled there. Phew.
Yeah, well, you kind of had an off year. 2019 really
It
kind of went sideways. My
yes.
2019 went sideways too. I mean, I went to the Dome, which you didn't go to, and I watched Yolanda and Anthony walk 100 miles in under 24 hours. And then I was a lap short of 100K and called up the airline and found out I could go home with no extra charge. And I went home.
One lap short of 100K,
Yeah,
and the laps are not 2 mile laps.
it
These are
was four.
quarter-mile laps. 1/4 mile is all you needed.
I,
Oh,
I didn't,
Andy.
I didn't care. I was just completely done. I'm never going to do another lap ultra, track ultra.
Yeah, right.
No, mentally, I can't do them. They just, something about the 400-meter format, because it's not social whatsoever. It's just a bunch of guys killing themselves. It's because you really can't walk along. And there, especially, it was like a 2-3 lane. It was really narrow,
You can't
and
walk
so
abreast. Yeah.
you can't walk abreast. You can't do anything. You just got to walk in line, and you've got guys whizzing around you. I mean, it might have gotten better by the third or fourth day, but it still wasn't kind of like, Blue or Across the Years where, you could get out there and just do a bunch of laps and
Yeah.
be a little more social. So yeah. So anyway, so you January you ran. That was our race kind of like your last race?
That was my last 100 miler until just about a week and a half ago.
Hmm.
So yeah, and it was. You're right. 2019. Man, it was, I DNF'd at AC 100. I didn't just DNF. I was heading up Wilson, which is Mount Wilson's not that high. What's it, 8,500 feet, or I don't know what it is, but it's
Yeah.
it's 8,000 something. It's not that high.
Yeah.
We
You're at
actually
past.
gone
You're at 80 miles now.
exactly. It's because we'd gone at one point, and I don't know the name of it, but we'd gone up at
Baden
almost
Powell's
10,000 feet.
10,000. Baden Powell's
Yes,
10,000 at
exactly.
mile
But that's
15.
right. That's early on, so that was no problem. Come back down, do some ups and downs, and then going up Wilson, I was just struggling severely. I probably was doing about 45 minutes for a half mile, not even 45 minutes for an hour,
Mm.
just struggling. People were just passing me. And I knew that even at the top, you still got to get back down to get to a place where you can get a ride. And it was
Yeah.
quicker and easier for me to just turn around and go back to the previous aid
Yes.
station, which is the worst thing to do. You never go backwards. Everybody knows it. Even a rookie doing his first 100 knows never go backwards. But I just really had not much of a
Yeah.
choice. So yeah, there was that DNF, and I've had some DNF, so it's like all right, that it happens. And then in November, I DNF'd at Chimera.
Another
Now
fugly course.
that was
Yeah.
yeah, that it just didn't go well for me there.
Yeah.
And then so I thought, all right. And I had a couple of races in between that I finished, 100 milers that I finished, but didn't go to ATY this past year. But your race, Celtic in Bakersfield, that's my race. It's my race on many levels. One, I own the course record. I've won the race what 3 times or so,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's a 1 mile loop flat in Bakersfield, not elevation. That's my wheelhouse. I should
Yes.
own that course. And I went out there and was just struggling severely. And as you know, by not even halfway through, it's like, man, I just physically I am just shot.
Yeah.
And so dropped it. You guys had a 50 miler as well,
Yeah.
so you graciously put me into the 50 mile, and because there's hardly anybody doing the 50, I got second place in the
Yes.
50, but by default. But in my mind, it's still a DNF because the
Yeah.
distance I set out to do was a 24-hour race. Obviously, 100 miles or more, but 24 hours, and I did not go the full distance. So
Yeah.
even though on the records it doesn't show a DNF,
Yeah.
it shows me a second place in the 50. I know that it was
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, so that's what this year, or from last August up until January, three
Yeah.
DNFs within that like 6 month time frame, which is just for me really really bad. And
Yeah. Well, I at my Celtic race, I came up to you when you're in like the 40s, 45 or something, which I'm usually never with you in a race at that point. Even when you're doing a 72, you're not ready to walk, and I'm not, and I can't run with you. And I just said, you could stop at 50, Ed, and you were like, yeah, that, it's like, oh my
Yeah, I'll
gosh,
take it.
he's actually going to do something smart for a change.
Yeah.
I was like, please just stop. And so
Sometimes I do something smart, but most of the time I don't. I just keep pushing and
Well,
kicking
it
the
works for you usually, but
Yeah.
it's kind of your whole 2014. You set the most 100 record was 2014, I believe. I don't ever
Yep.
have notes for this stuff,
Yep. 2014.
but you know, but then you just kept doing 20 or 30 hundreds for the next 3 or 4 years, and eventually, I don't care who you are, you're going to hit the windshield.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Well,
and I think it's great that you share that, like, hey, because people do want to like hear, like, we often joke, I mean, you're the guy, if there's a drop of water in the glass, it's full, and I'm
yeah.
always like, it could be almost full, and I'm like, it's half full. And it kind of we're kind of like yin and yang on that.
Yeah.
But I'm often like, Ed, come on, you'll often say, if you believe it, you can achieve it, and anybody can run 100 mile. And I'm like, no, no, that's not true. But there is a really good podcast. There's a really good documentary on Amazon, I think, called Only Once. And it's this comedian from the Midwest who grew up on a pig farm. And he was a big boy his whole life. And he's a big boy when he started running. And he actually sets out to do a 100-mile race after seeing an article. Everyone needs to watch it.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah, it's on it. It's like on Amazon or something. I'll try and put it in the show notes. But
Oh,
so kind of like, unfortunately, this whole craziness was good because it just kind of forced you to take a break from at least racing.
yeah. Hey,
And
I want to talk about that, but before I do, did he? Well, okay. I was
yeah,
gonna
no,
say, did he finish? But you know what? Don't give away.
no,
Don't give.
no,
I
no,
want
no.
to watch the movie and
It's
see. So
well,
I'll be surprised.
he's also a comedian, so it's not like I like interesting. I don't watch a lot of running stuff because it's boring. It's usually same kind of thing. He's
Right.
a comedian, so he starts on stage telling about his life and all this stuff and how how he decides to do a race is absolutely hilarious. I mean, it's just. In fact,
I gotta watch it.
you should watch it, and then we should wait a while and do like Bill Simmons does, the rewatchables, and break down the movie.
Oh,
And
that'd be
just
fun.
yeah, because that's what they kind of do in the show. So, but I highly recommend. I think it just came out on Amazon. So, like I was saying, you kind of gotten silver lining of. In fact, we kind of have a similar story. Is that I had a terrible fall in March and couldn't even walk for a month. From John's Burger dumped bacon grease on their sidewalk, and I slipped and fell,
Hmm.
like one of those pratfall movies. And so I was out of commission for a couple months.
Yeah,
And
but
then,
you ended up in the hospital, even right? You had some really.
well, that was because after 6 weeks of doing absolutely nothing, my body just got lazy, revolted, and I put on all this water. And I ended up peeing. When I ended up going to the doctor, they of course think I get profiled, fat, fat old guy. And so they think that I have all this stuff. And it turned out it was just, gave me Lasix, which makes you pee. And I peed off 21 pounds of water
Yeah.
in like 12 hours. And then all of a sudden I could breathe. And now I've had all these tests and I've passed all the tests, but I have athletic heart and, the guy after the fifth one. I got a good doctor now. In fact, his name is Doctor, which is hilarious.
Huh,
So,
that's his actual name.
I don't know when he changed. He's an Indian guy, but
Okay.
his last
Oh,
name is
funny.
Doctor. So
Oh,
he's
that's
Doctor,
awesome.
but really good guy. And he's got me on some meds that, I'm willing to take now. And I've talked about it on the podcast quite a bit. So, so I kind of was like, well, it's not too bad that there's no races because I was walking, I was kind of doing what you just said at AC. I was doing 45-minute miles with my leg hurt for like a couple weeks, and
Sometimes the body just tells us, hey, you got
yeah,
to pay attention and do something. Like for me, I ended up getting some battery of tests because I wasn't ready to hang up my running shoes quite yet.
yeah,
At 58, I think I've got some good race miles left in me.
yeah.
But my results weren't showing that. But anyway, the test results, well, my running results weren't showing that I had miles left in me, but my test results showed really low iron levels, so I got a
Hmm.
series of transfusions on that. But then the real issue was the severe adrenal fatigue. And for people who may not be aware, the adrenals are glands that sit above the kidneys, and their only function is to produce and put cortisol into the body.
Hmm.
And when you think of cortisol, it's like thinking of cholesterol. You think, well, cholesterol is bad. Well, no, cholesterol is in the cell lining of every cell. If you didn't have
Yes.
cholesterol, you'd be just a lump of jelly. So
Yeah.
you need it, but the right kinds of, because the body actually
Hmm.
produces cholesterol. You don't need outside sources of cholesterol. Your body makes it. But cortisol is the same thing, but we think of it as a bad thing because it's also known as the stress hormone. So what
Yes.
happens, here's normal levels, and if your adrenals are pumping in too much cortisol, your levels go up
Hmm.
above normal. Now, when it goes above normal, the body has its natural thing that it will do. Instead of letting it go on forever, the adrenals actually start shutting down, which forces the adrenals to produce less, and then eventually you're back to normal. But the problem is if you keep stressing your body, physical stress
Yeah.
and even emotional stress, eventually the adrenals are producing so little that your cortisol level drops below normal.
Yeah.
And that's what's dangerous. And that's where mine was at. I'd already gone to the high, and that was already going to the low end, and pretty much, almost complete adrenal shutdown. And that was just my body saying, you can't do this. You can't
Yes.
do this anymore. And so it forced me to rest. And the blessing, as much as it's a curse, but the blessing of the pandemic, there were no races. Even if I wanted to race, the races were every race
Yes.
was canceled. And even the one that I was really looking forward to, and because I was forced to get 6 months of rest and train properly, I was really looking forward to Badwater. And of course, we didn't know right up until, and then 2 weeks before, yes, the race is on. And then 3 days later, the race is off.
Well, the earthquake didn't help.
That didn't help. And
Yeah.
then I,
There's, if you don't know, there was an earthquake. They announced that the race is on, and like the very next day
next
at 10
day.
in the morning, we had a 6.0 earthquake in Lone Pine, which is mile 122 of Badwater. So you really couldn't be
And
more.
there were landslides and
Yeah.
rocks were
Yeah.
in the
Yeah. The
road.
road was
And
closed. Speaking of
yeah.
cortisol, it's interesting that often, I'm known as this big guy, and I've done everything under the sun, and I'm 250 usually, and I can get down to like 225 if I start myself vegan diet or whatever. But a lot of people look and doctors look at that I have too high of cortisol levels. In fact, there's a syndrome called Cushing syndrome, and you have a moon face and a big barrel gut. And so I probably am borderline on that, where
Hmm.
I'm pumping out too much, but I haven't hit yours where I went to, crashed, completely. So you basically just took some time off and you weren't doing much, and I'm sure that, and it's, as everybody, it's affected your businesses and stuff,
Hmm.
and and you're feeling better now, and you did a race, and so, like, when we just kind of, I mean, I was telling Ed before we started that we definitely maybe do more of these, and I think it'd be interesting because you just shared all that great stuff about cortisol, figuring that stuff out. um, so were you doing any did you just basically do no training, nothing for a while,
There was a period of
and then
time when,
let's bring this into your chase the Jester thing. So
okay,
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
There was a period of time, like early spring, I guess, where had just quit running. Physically, I was shot. And you know what? Quite frankly, I just didn't have the mental motivation.
Mhm.
And then I that one was coming up. Of course, we didn't know back then if it was going to be held, but they picked the entrance in early February, so I knew since February that I was going to be in. It was going to be my 10th Badwater in a row, and I was talking to one of my crew and saying, I just haven't been doing any training at all. And she said, Ed, why don't you just post something? And I'd been off Facebook for quite a long time too. I have waves with social media. It's a love-hate relationship.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I just have to take a break. And I was on a break, hadn't posted anything. She said, Ed, why don't you just post something on Facebook? Do one little run and post it. And so I did. And then someone saw that and got back to me about streak running that they were doing, that they were inspired to do, because had started doing a streak, which I've started many, many times. And he was coming up to like his 500th day and invited me to come out and be a part of that. And so I did. But I started on a streak as well. I have lost track. It's not that big of a streak. It is for me. I'm up to probably getting close to 90 days, but that's every single day doing 2 miles. And now a streak is an individual's
Yes.
whatever they set their criteria up. So for me, I don't run every day. I will power walk, and that, to me, that's I'm getting the miles in. So I go out and do at least 2 miles a day, and it's amazing that I've gotten kind of used to that now, and gotten kind of over that
Mm,
hump. And so I got really active back into running and getting some good miles in, and then kind of got remotivated. And then Badwater was coming up. It was going to be my 10th in a row, and I was thinking maybe I could go sub 30 hours because I haven't never done that. And then of course it got canceled. So
yeah.
you mentioned about a race. So I had all this heat training and was ready to go, and then a race came into my onto my radar in Kentucky, and they call it kind of the Badwater Midwest. It's called Honey Badger 100.
Hmm.
So it's 100 miles on flat pavement. It's car crewed, and the temps get up into like the mid 90s or so, maybe a little higher. So compared to Badwater, where it can get 120 or more, it's like yeah, you can't really call yourself the Badwater of the
Hmm.
Midwest with 90-degree temperatures. I mean, come on. So I went out and did that race, and let me tell you, it was a humbling experience because doing a race in Badwater that's 120 degrees with 0% humidity is
Yes.
not the same as doing a race in Kentucky that's low or mid 90s with 70 or
Yep.
80% humidity. And that about killed me. It was an eye opening experience. And it's
Yes.
funny because people knew I did Badwater and they talked to me afterwards. Yeah, so how does this heat compare to Badwater? Because I know Badwater here is really, really hot. And they're all
Yeah.
nervous about thinking, oh, that's got to be so bad. And I said, you know what? I'll take Badwater heat any day. You
Yeah.
keep this stuff. I don't ever want to do this again. And now I've got a whole bunch of races I've got lined up for the Midwest.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So
yeah,
that was a
no,
Kentucky one. I thought
it
you were in
was
Kansas.
Kentucky. I know Kansas. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Kansas. I
Okay.
have a Kentucky one coming up.
Okay.
Actually, is it
Well,
in two
yeah.
the next weekend after the next one in Kentucky? So I'm thinking
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
always
we
looking
we have
forward. But
we had
Kansas,
this
you're
we had
right.
the same story in 2018. I kind of went nuts, and probably was why my 2019 was such a disaster. And I went to the Race for the Ages, one of Laz's races, and in Tennessee. But a month before that, I paced and crewed Carla Kent to her seventh or so hundred bad water finish,
I
and
remember
I
I was
did,
there.
and I did. Yeah, we were with you quite often during that race, and I did 50 miles out there, stayed up for 2.5 days, and I never really thought of myself as hot because I live in Bakersfield, and where you live is fairly hot too. But it was such a dry heat, and then a month later I go to that little town in Tennessee, and it was miserable. And I was like, I'll go back to Badwater in a heartbeat, because that
Yes.
humidity. Because what happens is, you dry off one at Badwater, but two at night it gets almost cold. And in Tennessee, with the humidity, it never really gets cold. And as soon as that sun comes up, so it gets down to like 85, and the sun comes up, and it's 95 immediately. And it was just, yeah, it was. In fact,
And
I
good.
think about doing other races. I had this little thing, like I kind of wanted to do a race in every state, but I only got about 10. But that the idea of going down there, and I used to live in Georgia long ago, but the idea of doing those races, and all those Southerners made fun of me. They made fun of me at the Dome One in Alaska because I thought it was humid there. But yeah, so you're now on. You got that 100 from Kansas a week or two ago,
Yeah.
and now you've got a bunch of other races you're got planned. And
My goal is to do 10 hundreds in a row coming up this next weekend, and I've got 5 of them lined up. The next 5 after that are some of them we don't know with COVID-19.
mhm.
They're still kind of up in the air on those. But yeah, so my goal is well, all right. So it's just between us two guys, and it's you and I, and then no one else is going to hear this. But I'll go ahead and say it publicly for I guess the first time. My goal is to go back and reclaim my world record because Walter Hanloser took it away from. Now he earned it. He
Yeah.
earned it fair and square. He worked really hard. But I had done 41 100-mile finishes in 2014. Last year, Walter did 50, and
Hmm.
so I'm going to turn 58 here in a couple weeks. And my goal is to try and do 58 to maybe even 60.
Okay.
And I'd love to be able to do it next year, but it is such a huge undertaking, and it's very, very expensive and time
Yes.
consuming. So here's kind of my goal. If you're wondering, well, why are you going to do 10 hundreds in a row? What's the point of that? Part of it is for my own self confidence because
Hmm.
I lost a little bit of it. It was nice to do this race. I had a sub 24-hour finish and had a fourth place overall, third place male. It was a small group that did the race, but it really was for me a chance to see, okay, I still got it in me. I can still do a decent 100-mile race. So I want to do this 10 in a row to reinforce that and also get kind of a test my legs a little bit on the consistency of race after race after race, but also my goal is to do well enough to where I can maybe shop myself around a little bit and find a sponsor because I'd love to get a sponsor because
Yeah.
I already had made a commitment that if I don't have a sponsor, I'm just not going to do it. It's just I'm
Oh yeah.
quite frankly, I'm still paying the bills from doing it 6 years ago, and I just can't afford to do that again. And 3 years before that, I'd broken the world record for most marathons in a year. So I just can't do it on my own. But so my goal is to get out there, do these 10 in a row, and then shop around for the next
Well,
couple months and see if I can get a sponsor, maybe even go for it in 2021,
yeah.
if not 2022, to try and break the 60.
Well, also the thing is, you've got quite a number of career hundreds, but then Ultra Running History did that whole thing on who's got the most hundreds, and that English lady show turns up has way over 200, and so these 10 are going to get you closer to 200, and then if she just keeps rolling along, but you got to go chase her. And for the longest time, you really didn't know. No one really knew that she
You know, she
existed.
existed.
Amazing that she walks these 100-mile races in pretty decent times, and
She
she's got
does.
like you have. I'm not sure how many she has, so that's kind of doing this bunch of hundreds is going to get your number up, so that once you get out there and do it, it all kind of obviously snowballs in, and yeah, it's just so I don't even know how many she has. It was kind of shocking when that all came out. You're like, oh my gosh,
Never
yeah,
even heard of her.
yeah, and
Sandra Brown. Yeah, her name's
Sandra Brown,
Sandra
yeah,
Brown,
yeah.
and she's 70. The funny thing is, her birthday is April 1st.
Mhm.
So I'm the Jester,
Yeah,
and she's born on April Fool's Day of all things. So we've got that in common. But yeah, she'll be turning 71 next year, but she's still pumping them out. And now she has a career of I think she started in '82, so what 38 years of doing hundreds. And for me, basically, it's been in the last 10 years I've
yeah,
done 180, 84. She's done I think a couple over 200. She might be up at 205 or 210 by now, but that's over 38 years. But
yeah,
still, and maybe that's why she's able to do
yeah.
so well at her age, is she's spaced them out.
Well, she also it wasn't more spaced them out. There just wasn't as many.
Right. In
I,
England, yeah.
well, no way, anywhere in the
Oh,
80s
that's
and
true.
90s.
Starting out, there
Yeah,
weren't any. Yeah,
I mean, you couldn't set these records in like you couldn't even set your 2014 record. You couldn't have done it in 2010 probably because there just wasn't enough
it's not enough.
races.
You're right.
In
That's true.
2000, I mean, I started running in '79. In fact, we share that background that we both kind of started running when we were in high school. I'm 57, you're 58, so you're just a year, you know, uh, older than me. I mean, I just turned 57 in May, and you're gonna be 58 in a little time now.
August, yeah,
Yeah.
next month.
So yeah, we're close in age, but definitely you can still crank them out until your 60s. There's an 80-year-old guy who just did 145 miles in Atlanta a couple weeks ago and broke the world record, 145 miles in a 48-hour race. So
It's awesome.
he beat Don Winkley's records, and I've run with him. I think his name's Doyle Carpenter or something like that. But yeah, just a real tough guy. And then of course, Yolanda's just been cranking out all the races, and she's now 60, 61, I believe. And of course, she's done a race that you someday want to go do, the New
That
York
is right.
31, the 3100.
Yes.
I went there last year and kind of scouted it out, hung out there for a day, and it's more insane than I even imagined. It's a
And
half
it's
mile.
in New
It's
York heat and
yeah,
humidity. Yeah.
and concrete. It's
Concrete.
on a half-mile concrete loop in
Wow.
Jamaica, Queens. It's truly insane.
Brutal.
I was supposed to do a 100-mile race, got lost a lot in the streets of New York, and eventually timed out at like 100K and took us subways back to. But and then I went there the next day, and so I did 60-ish miles in my race, and then just to finish the damn thing, you got to do 60 miles a day for 50 days. And, I'm just laying around half dead watching these guys that are, some with midway through. So that's another adventure you got on your books that you sometimes.
I might. Well, I'm on the list
Yeah.
for sure, and they'll choose as they get closer in. But I think I've got a decent shot. If they only have like a dozen people
Yeah,
that
at most. Yeah, like
because they take care of you. They provide you an apartment to stay in because it's forced closure between midnight and
yes,
6 a.m.
which is
But
a good thing.
yeah, right. If you're going to be out there for 50 days in a row, but yeah,
Yeah.
they provide you an apartment. They provide all your meals. They really
Yes.
take really good care of you. And for the price you pay, it's like they're going on the whole. I
Yeah.
think
Oh yeah.
it's definitely a labor of love for them.
They treated me so wonderfully when I came there, and they kind of knew me, but then they knew I knew Yolanda, and they knew I knew you, and just was a really great experience in terms of that. I'm seriously thinking of doing their 6 and 10 day someday that you've done yourself, the
I've
one they
done
have in
that. It's a
April
great
at
event,
the
and that
World.
one is Flushing Meadows.
Yes.
Yeah, in Queens. It's a good. I love it because I love the 1 mile paved loop, and it goes through park area. It's the site of the 1964 World's Fair.
Yeah. Where
And
Men in Black.
yeah, so you can see that's cool. As
Yeah.
you go around part of the race, you can see the two. It's now shut down because it has asbestos inside of it, so they can't remodel it. They can't tear it down. It's
Yeah.
just there. That's like rusting away. But you can see
Yeah.
those, and then also, um, was it King of Queens, the sitcom,
Mhm.
where they show that big the globe, the metal globe that
Yeah.
is there, and you can see that. So yeah, it's a really, and that's where this will date me even before my time. But Simon and Garfunkel, they went and recorded a lot of their stuff out there, or had
Mhm.
inspiration out there at that Flushing Meadows.
Yeah.
And
You even told me that there were like cricket matches going on.
yeah, I could not for the life of me. So for 10 days, I'm there going around and around and around, and they have lots of different fields and some playing soccer, but quite a few cricket matches. I could not figure out how that game works. Even when somebody tried to explain it to me, it's like, okay,
Yes.
wait, they've got two different batters on both sides of the dot. This doesn't make sense, and I couldn't. It's like I was
Well,
hallucinating trying to
and
figure out this.
one of my favorite things on all the different streaming is they do these behind the scenes. They first did them with NFL, following a team through training camp, and now they've got them for soccer, and they have an amazing one for Formula One race car driving. When anybody listens to my podcast, I've been talking about Formula One. Now I'm actually watching it, but I actually watched one where there's two of them. There's one on the Indian professional team, and then another one on Australia cricket. And I've watched both those series, and I was an avid baseball fan, and I still almost don't understand the game, even though they show quite a lot of the games. It involves trying to knock the wickets over, and then you strike them out basically, and then they're trying to hit the ball and getting points. And but yeah, it's just, and like, but us ultra people, the true test match lasts a week, and they play like 8-10 hours a day. So it's an ultra sport in a way, but it's just as confusing
I,
as heck.
I I think part of the confusion is because we grew up on baseball,
Yes. Oh yeah.
and if you had a clean slate,
Yes. Yeah.
you wouldn't have that in your way. But that so much influences you, and you're trying to compare it to baseball, and you just can't do it. It's yeah, they have a bat, what they call a bat, which is just looks more like to me what my principal had as a paddle
Yes.
back
Yes.
in the day when if we got in trouble,
Yes.
back when corporal punishment at school was acceptable.
Yeah.
He had one of those, and I had it used
Yep.
on me a couple times.
I,
Uh,
I avoided it, but they used to put holes in it. I heard to make it hurt
my
more.
guy had holes in it. How funny!
Yes.
Yeah, mine. I didn't even say that. Yeah, he had like 1 inch holes all drilled in it. This big
Supposedly,
paddle.
yeah, it would hurt more.
That's wind resistance, I
Yeah.
guess. But yeah, so you have to divorce yourself from what you know about baseball
Yes.
to learn what cricket's about.
Yeah.
And probably for people who try to understand, comprehend ultra running, especially if they grew up being sprinters or any short little distance, they can't comprehend. It's like, okay, never mind what you did back in your day when you do,
Yeah.
100 meters and you were shot, and now we're doing 100 miles. You can't comprehend it because it's different. It's not.
Well,
We're moving forward. We're running, but it's a completely different ball game.
yeah. Well, speaking of that, it's kind of inside baseball in that I often have that discussion with you and you wanting to do a book or all these things is like, I go, Ed, your accomplishments are so vast and great that it's just mind boggling. People can be like, so like some people who maybe finished one epic race, they can go out and have like a pretty big career on it. And you finish so many that they're like, so you've done 9 bad waters instead of like 1 bad water or 180 400s. Like and like I said, I love the documentary the guy just did, but you know, he did a documentary documenting his first 100. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often tell Ed, like, going like, that's like Ed if he's applying for a job at a convenience store and you had like myself a couple of degrees, I'd have to leave them off my resume to get hired because they'd be like, you have a degree in biology and a degree in economics, why are you applying for this job? And so yours, you've got it's so much accomplishments. And you know, like I said, I hopefully we can talk about that. One of the things you brought it up about the expense of doing this event, and I brought this up with you, and I'm, you know, me and Ed have spent lots of time, and I'm not going to go too out of school, but one of the things I've often talked to you about is doing a Patreon page or letting people help you achieve these goals. And I think that's something we might want to set up for you in terms of you know, when you go after you know, to try and get the record, doing something like that. But you're going to, you know, you already provide so much for people going to races and continue and you helping them finish and all that stuff, but actually giving them a venue that they can support you. I know you've been resistant of that in the past, but you know, the corporate guys, they don't really care about accomplishments. And I shared with you, and I've done a podcast on it. People can look it up. I won't bring it up right now, but you know, and especially in these times, you know, results sometimes don't matter. It's more a story. And a lot of times the story is pretty BS or barely a story, and it's like a story from quite some time ago. And so I really like to, you know, I didn't mean to out you right in the front, but like saying, you know, we kind of maybe do something like that because we discussed that. I would love to go to the 3100 race possibly and support you, not be there every damn day. I might want to go see a little bit of New England,
Yeah.
but I'll be there for a day or two and then maybe a couple days and then head off and, you know, have like a schedule and help you get in and out of the because they give you an apartment and all that stuff. So
Yeah. You
just kind
know,
of your thoughts on that kind of stuff.
well, I'll tell you what, as you, one of the benefits of getting older is you can maybe get more mellow and maybe change some of your hard, fast
Mm-hmm.
principle. It wouldn't really be a principle, but I guess sort of. But yeah, I was opposed to, I just didn't want to ask for help and it doesn't feel right to me. And there was a time when I would say absolutely not. But you know what? I've mellowed and I'm open to that idea because the reality is people, if they want to contribute to help me in my quest and that helps them feel like they're a part of it, then I'm kind of denying them that by not giving them that opportunity, I suppose. I mean, that's the way I can sort of justify it. So I'm open to the idea now, and especially if I don't get any bites, I might very well say, okay, guys, here's my goal. No way it's going to happen without your help. If you can contribute a buck or $5 or $10 a month for the next year and help me out, if I get enough people that can do that,
Yeah.
keep me ahead of the game till I'm able to pay for the races and pay for my travel expenses, a little bit in advance. So I'm open to that actually now because I want it so bad to where
Yeah.
I'll do that.
And, you know, throughout history, you know, there's been patrons of the arts, you know, that's how
Sure,
all
that's
the
where it came
great art.
from.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's how we got all the great art in all these places is someone commissioned music, you know, painting. And
Yes.
I often tell people, you know, what I do. Steve Fontaine had a great quote that, you know, what you're doing in these races is kind of artistic. It's the way we express ourselves. And Steve Fontaine said something like, when people come see me race, I want them to go away going, wow, I've never seen anything like that. I've never, the performance or whatever he did, like, wow, that was something different and unique. And, you know, and I often
Yeah,
strike
but he
that like,
was a unique guy. I mean, that guy, just looking at videos of his past performances and knowing about him, of course, he died, what, in the 70s? Was
yeah,
it?
I mean, he
Yeah.
died when he was 25,
Yeah.
but so he would go to the Olympics and he'd be like, you know, I'm going to make it an honest, true race. And then he got fourth.
Yeah.
You know,
He
and
went out so hard right from
yeah,
the start.
but, you know, but his legends continue on, but just talking about that in terms of like myself, when I race and I'm a big guy. And so I often think like, you know, doing stuff so that changes people's perspectives of what can be possible. Like, wow, if he can do it, I can do it. And I had people coming up there, and then yourself, where you're, motivating and helping people. And so, just, I think we all want you to, be able to do it. And, if you're going to try and just deal with, the organization, some of them might help you, but, like I said, I've had many people get dropped by these guys, or they don't, and the big thing is, you don't realize, there was an article I saw where only like a dozen US distance runners are actually making six figures, and six figures, 100 grand.
Yeah.
Which, and so when you think of all the athletes and read about, most of those people most of our Olympians are barely getting by. The big name sports like basketball, football, and all those, there's, millions and millions of dollars, and they should get paid because they are 1 in a million or 1 in a billion. But there's a big idea that like runners are getting paid tons of money and doing things. And like I said, you're just trying to, get by and do these dreams you've had, and you've been real successful so far. But it would be awesome to, like I said, we'll talk about it more, and maybe finally set up something. Speaking of that, though, you did start. I keep saying it, and then we keep going off. Your challenge, which is something
Yes.
people can join, and tell us about that and how you told me
Sure.
about it. It's actually an idea you've had for your daughter had.
Yes,
Yeah.
my
So
daughter
go on to that one.
Andrea. Okay, so
Yes.
my daughter Andrea, who is my middle daughter, she's crewed me at Badwater 7 years in a row. And one of my favorite all-time photos is when she was 8 and her brother was 9. We crossed the finish line of the LA Marathon together. Now, this wasn't me doing the LA Marathon and my 2 kids running out the finish line going with me. No, we did every step of the LA Marathon together. It took us 8 hours and 40 minutes. In the picture, you can see the time clock in the background with that
Wow.
8:40 right on it. And little 8-year-old, and 9-year-old little brother of hers. But anyway, so we've got quite a lot of shared experiences in running, and she wanted to put together a company, just run, and we have that now. And so with the virtual races that came out, and I don't want to say I was opposed to virtual races, but it just there was something inside me. It's like it's not really a race. You're just kind of running on your own and recording the mileage. But then I signed up for a couple of the virtual races, and it really did motivate me to get out there and get my mileage in. And so I saw the benefit of it. And then Andreas made some suggestions. So anyway, what ended up happening
But
is,
she had been bugging you, and I know
oh
how
yeah,
it is to bug you. I've been asking you to do things for going almost a decade,
yeah,
and so she asked you to do it a few years ago, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it really started heavy about a year ago that she
Yeah.
said, "Dad, let's get this running company going." And we wanted to put on races, some
Yeah.
small little local races, and then give it the pandemic. So we ended up going with uh, putting together a virtual. I call it a virtual run, a virtual challenge, because I don't feel quite right about calling it a race. In my mind,
Hmm.
a race is, for example, this race I just did in Kansas. We show up together at the
Yes.
start line. We do the same amount of mileage with the same weather conditions and all the other
Oh yeah.
factors, all the same. That to me is a race, because you're comparing A to B to C to D. Where when it's a virtual event, when I could do it, at 60 degrees temperature in the cool part of the morning. And
Yeah.
anyway, so that's where I have a problem with calling it a race. But we call it the virtual run, and you could call it a race if you want. It's set up that way. It's kind of set up to be a race because you can track yourself and compare to yourself to others that are doing it. So we have 3 different distances. It's called Chase the Jester Across California, because, well, I'm from California. So the first distance goes from virtually from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Lake Tahoe at the California-Nevada border, and that's 220 miles. It's the Pony Express Trail, and we talk about a little bit about the history of the Pony Express Trail and how that came about. It's pretty fascinating to me. I love history. And then there's that's the bronze, and so I fashioned it after bronze, silver, gold medals because 2 things. One is the Olympics, which were supposed to be coming up here shortly in Japan,
Hmm.
got rescheduled to next year.
Yeah.
But also because California is the only state in the union that's hosted both summer and winter Olympics.
Hmm.
There's Squaw Valley, Alpine Village up Lake Tahoe, and then LA. and Squaw Valley was I believe 1960,
Yes.
and LA was 1932, 1988, and coming up in 2028 be the third year that LA hosted the Summer Olympics. Anyway, going from one venue to the other is 492 miles. So we made that the silver medal. And so the medals are actually they're 5-inch medals in the shape of California,
Hmm.
in the color of the gold, silver, or bronze.
Yeah.
And they have some iconic pictures on them, and they also have a red outline of the route. So Pony Express Trail goes, again, Golden Gate to Tahoe.
Yeah.
Silver one goes Tahoe to LA, and then we have the gold, which goes from the border of Mexico all the way up to Golden Gate Bridge, and that's I believe 680 some miles. And then you could actually do a combo of any of the
Yeah,
two,
and the
or
gold
triple.
and the gold one was the missions, right?
Yes, that's true. That's the
Which
mission. So it's
every
basically
California kid
going to
and
the
parent
missions.
and every California kid and parent knows
It's
the
on a
mission
mission
well
project.
because we have a mission project. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
like
what is it, sixth grade that every
yeah,
kid has to
something.
do that? I
Yeah.
don't know if they still do, but yeah, when my
Oh
kids grew
yeah.
up, every year in sixth grade they had to do a mission project. So yeah, so we all know the missions. And
Yeah.
another kind of interesting thing is the missions were built to be a day's distance away,
Hmm.
which they determined a day of distance back in those days, mid 1700s, on horseback was 26 miles. So me and the
Yes.
missions are not exactly 26, but based on that. So anyway, all the way up to San Francisco. And then there's the Triple Crown, which is if you do all three of them, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But there's also a theme behind it. The idea is to get out there and get some miles in, and it goes all the way to the end of the year. So at
Hmm.
any point you can jump in, and
Yeah.
we started it on Memorial Day. So you might think, well, it's already been going on for 2 months. Yeah, but if you do the 220 miles, uh, 2 miles a day, a mile and a half a day, you can still get that one done, and the other
Yeah.
ones, you just figure it out. But there's something behind it as well, and that is to bring recognition to the new suicide awareness and prevention number. Many people are not aware of this, that there's a new national number. It's the number 988 to replace the
Hmm.
toll-free 800-273-8255, which is also 800-273-TALK. Even so, it's 10 numbers long, it's bulky, it's
Yeah.
not an easy number to remember, whereas 988, fashioned after like 911, you can remember that, and in
Hmm.
a crisis, hopefully it'll come to mind. The FCC, the congressional committee that oversees the FCC, passed it back in December of last year, and they said it would take 18 months to put it into action. And I thought, wow, that's just way too long, because that means it would be like this time next year.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't so bad, because now they're saying, and I got to check and see, there was a vote that went before the full.
There was something late just in the news that was positive about it. And I should have sent you the link. I just was out
Yeah, I
walking and
think
saw it.
there was a vote. There was just like in the last
Yeah.
week, and I'm sure it would have been unanimous. I can't see why anybody would be against it. But they said when they were talking about the vote, there'd be 2 more years after that. It's like, wait a minute, it was supposed to be possibly May of 2021. Now they're saying summer of 2022, and it's ridiculous. Why is it that we don't just say, look, phone companies, I know there's some things you have to do, technical things, to do it, get it done. So that's part of the reason behind this race, is to bring awareness to that number and awareness to suicide awareness prevention. I've never made it a secret that I've dealt with mental health issues my whole life. I am uh, uh, bipolar level 1, so more of a minor degree of bipolar than the extremes, but and I've dealt with depression a lot in my life, and point in my life years ago, I was suicidal. So that's always been something near and dear to me, and I have no problem talking about it publicly, because I think it needs to be talked about and addressed, and not buried and pushed
Yeah.
under the carpet. So
Good news here, Ed. I just, if I might have disappeared on the film, I don't know how, because exactly Zoom. I Googled it. Like Joe Rogan and those guys have their lackeys do this, where they can look up things while they're talking.
yeah,
And it was that the federal communications rules require all phone service to direct all 988 calls to the suicide prevention line as of July 16th, 2022. So yeah, that was so that's unfortunately that was the latest news, but that's not for another year.
2022.
Yeah, 2022.
That's 2 years, and so to me, that's just
Yeah,
ridiculous.
two. Yeah,
If
yeah,
it's
it's 2
passed,
years.
why do we need? I mean, 2 years? Come
Yeah,
on. 2
Yeah.
months. 2
Yeah.
months at most.
See, when I first pulled it up, I didn't read it correctly. I thought, oh, July 16th, because I knew they talked. But yeah, they're going to take 2 years to do that, which is, and, and especially during, let me try and get back to, um,
Oh, this
especially during,
pandemic.
yeah, I mean, and, that's just definitely, causing issues, and it's in the, it's, I mean,
Terrible.
like myself, I'm not really too impacted because in my family they're all homebodies and they don't go anywhere. I'm like the only one that ever left the house, and so they're pretty much rolling like it is normal. And I'm lucky that I've got my wife and kids. And unfortunately, when it first happened, I had that injury, and in fact, when I had the injury for the first 5 or 6 weeks, I couldn't. I was doing 10 miles a day. I was doing 5,000 mile years for 10 years. And then,
Wow.
so you take the human body doing that and then have it do nothing for a month. And then I finally, the leg wasn't hurting, or I could go out and do a mile or two at like 22-minute miles. Then, like late April, I started getting this shortness of breath. And I've thought I've had, like, I mean, everybody has anxiety. I thought, and they Google it, and I had no other symptoms. So I thought I was having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and I couldn't breathe. And so, and it was coming like late at night. So I really was, again, thinking it was, mental thing, which is just like, a diabetes or, all those kind of things. And so, a problem is diabetes, you can give you insulin and take care of you. When it's a mental thing, what do? We just, and so I was really, really freaked out and pretty scared. And then what basically happened was on April 25th, I had 2 or 3 nights that were just terrible. I was sleeping out in my backyard just because I often like laying on the ground because I could breathe a little better. And but the mental, so I ended up going to the hospital the next morning, which shocked my wife. It was the first time I've ever been to the hospital in my life. And thankfully it was a physical thing. I was just put on all this water weight because my heart basically just, it mimicked congestive heart failure. Congestive heart failure is your heart gets really big and then it gets thick to try and pump, and then it adds water to you, and that's basically what happened. Now, congestive heart failure is usually what you hear. No disrespect to people who might get at a younger age, but it used to be like, 80-year-old Senator so-and-so dies of congestive heart failure. It usually was the last thing that got you. You had great medical care and they fixed everything, but eventually the heart just goes, we're done. My doctor, after they thought that's what was going on with me, but then eventually they said, well, or your body just got lazy and quit working for you.
Mm.
But kind of going hand in hand with this whole 988, I was just having a break mentally, like, wow, who do I get a hold of? What can I do? And then, and someday I hope to have this person on and talk to him. I had an individual who I know, has had, has so many people in the ultra world with drug issues and stuff like that. And there's an incident where you want to get him help, but who do you call besides 911? You don't really want to hand him over. And in my head, after this all happened, I was like, it'd be really nice if there was a number I could call that professionals who knew how to deal with mental illness and drug issues could come and get him instead of the cops to come and get him and then throw him in the jail system. Yeah. So, this is definitely something that, and hopefully get that message out. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I was really hoping when I Googled it, that I knew they'd said some announcement, and I guess in their world, 2022 is awesome, which is just, because who knows, with this whole COVID thing, it's just going on and on. I mean, high school sports in California now have been completely delayed. Football is going to be in January in cross country, and I'm hoping that all happens. So, speaking of that, I know you're trying to do some races. You did Kansas City. You kind of got me excited. You're talking about the Angry Owl, and they did open that up. They're going to have a race.
Yeah.
And so you're going to go up there and do that.
Just signed up today.
Yeah, I thought long and hard about it. I kind of got really, I do want to do a race, but talking to my wife and a couple other good friends who often don't agree on things whatsoever, they both agreed that it'd be, for me, a terrible idea. They're like, they're at a point where like they'd really be mad at me if I went.
Uh-huh.
But also I don't want to go because flying to and from with the mask on, mentally, I honestly think I could probably get a doctor to write me, because I really can't do it. But I'm not being a dick about it. I have this wonderful thing besides the links to Ed's races will be in the show notes. I also have an Instacart show notes. Never know, they're not paying me, but I get a $10 if you actually sign up Instacart. But like I haven't been in a business in a month. Instacart's this awesome thing where you can order. We just had a smart and final order. Someone shops, gets the stuff for you, and then brings it to your house, kind of like I was doing DoorDash. And you can get Instacart, Costco, CVS. And so just the other day was the first time I actually been in a business. I went with my friends up in the mountains to hike, and we were low on gas. And I was going to go walk, I had to go into the gas station, and they wanted a mask required. And I was like, gosh, I haven't actually been in a business. So knowing the only time I've worn a mask in the past month or two is when I go to the doctor, and so I wear it when I have to. But so kind of we're talking about this because we're just talking like friends here. I'm like, I'd really love to go up there and be with Ed and do the race, but the idea of having to wear the mask in the airport and on the plane. And then the other issue is, and bless them, they're putting on the race, but they also said they're only going to have like 45 participants. And I love the social aspect of that. That's 45 participants in the 6-hour, 12-hour, 24-hour. That means in the middle of the night, and I love being with Ed, but it'll be me and Ed, and that'll be it. But so I'll be out there for 24 hours walking around by myself, and that's just not really what I like. I need people to do big numbers, but I also need people just to, as we talked about, like on a track. I hate it. And so I kind of thought, nah, I mean, it's just not gonna fly. So I did turn down. So hopefully someone else will get it. But yeah, but where like you're going there and you want to complete 100 and you want to win, and so it's a perfect situation for you. And you flew to Kansas. How was that getting there?
You know what? Well, the airports are like a ghost town. I mean,
Yes.
it's like boom, in and out. It's like wow, this is amazing. But yeah, mask as soon as you enter the airport grounds. From then until you leave, mask on continuously during the flights. Always mask on. You get used to it. I got to a point where I didn't really think about it.
I know a lot of people do, but it's something. I just can't do it. It's just I mean, I guess I could. I mean, I see these poor kids. Like I do go through drive-throughs, and you see these poor kids working at these fast food places, not getting paid much, and having to wear that thing all day long. And I'm in Bakersfield where it's 105. But I mean, if I absolutely had to do it, I could maybe do it. But I mean, it's definitely something that I've always had like exercise-induced asthma and other issues that well, like yourself, you want it enough that you'll put up with it and maybe it doesn't bother you. But me, I'm like, it's just, in fact, I was talking to you about elevation mask and I thought, maybe I'll buy one of those so at least I can get some restricted breathing going on. And then maybe like, not just like, but,
I'll tell you what, that makes having this teeny little cloth mask nothing. And I just, for me, I just put a buff on, one of my running buffs. I just bring that up over my nose.
Yeah.
It does the job that they want us to do. And
yeah, I wear a buff too. Most of the time.
That's my mask. It's much easier. But a couple of things that you mentioned. One is about being out there with people. Yeah, that's the way it is for me. Like I'm a public speaker, and everything we do now is on Zoom, and it's just so hard for me because I need that audience interaction and that energy, and I need to be able to look in people's eyes and be able to hear their reactions. Well, same thing with 100-mile races. And that's the great thing about it is there's a flavor for everybody. It's like Baskin Robbins, 32 flavors. Those who like to do trail races and be alone, secluded out in the mountains, that's great. And I do trail races, trail hunters, and I enjoy them. But what I really love is the social aspects of the fixed time events on a small little loop. We're going round and around and around the same people. Even if you're at different mileage, there's a certain point that you might hook up and do the same pace for. We've done it for hours and hours. We're just at that 14-minute, 15-minute mile power watt pace just to walk the clock off. Just keep miles going through that rough part of the night. So I really love that. And what I was thinking about is that would be one aspect of if I did set up something like a Patreon, I would feel like I'm running for, the people. I'm running for my people who have, it's no longer, a corporate sponsor, paid for my races. It's, hey, these are individual people. It's like a politician who has no corporate sponsors. It's all from $5 and $10 contributions. And so that would actually give me a big incentive when I'm doing week after week after week, not just one, but sometimes trying to squeeze in 200s. That would be really helpful for me. But I also, one other thing I want to mention is anybody who is interested in looking into my virtual race, chase the Jester across California. Be sure when you go on, use the discount code ANDY10, all in caps.
Oh, it's noise
ANDY.
10 actually.
What's that?
It's noise 10.
Noise 10. I'm sorry. Well,
Yeah.
good thing you're here. Okay. So it's
Yeah.
noise.
And it'll be in the show notes.
NOISE.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it'll be in the
Yeah.
show notes.
Think of like the Grinch.
Yeah.
Oh, the noise. You know, when he was
Yeah.
hearing the singing down below. So noise 10.
Yeah.
And that'll give you a $10 discount off of the entry fee. Love to have you come join us on that.
One of the things you were talking about with like doing the Patreon and supporting is, as anyone listens to my podcast, and I've actually got over 500 episodes, so some people freak out on. I'm like, yeah, but most of them are 10 or 15 minutes long. This one, but I say like Joe Rogan does 2 or 3 hour ones all the time. It's the most popular podcast around, and they talk. They're basically doing what me and you are doing. We're just riffing back and forth, just talking about. There's no script. There's no, believe me, there's no script, as you can tell. But what was really interesting, you're talking about the Patreon and support. I also listen to Adam Kroll a lot. Adam Kroll is like my age. He's a little younger than me, and he's come up. He barely got out of high school. He was a carpenter, all this stuff, but he wanted a comedian. He went his own route. But when he finally got some success, he realized like Hollywood just wasn't interested in him. And so he realized, and he talks about his podcast, he goes, I built my own pirate ship, and your support is wind in my sails.
Yes.
And so he realized like Hollywood isn't gonna, so he's made movies, he's written 4 or 5 books, but he counts on his fans and his listeners to build. He built a pirate ship, and you guys are helping. You're part of his crew and putting wind in his sails. And so everything he does, and he does a lot of stuff that you're already doing. Giving back to the community, and just special projects and things like that. And like with the Patreon, you can make have all kinds of perks and things like that. And so that's kind of the same in line that I think definitely for your pursuit of getting back the 100 record for the year, and then even the 3100. I think something that we definitely need to, we talked about in the past, and just need to kickstart that and really get it rolling. And it's good that you kind of acknowledge, and that's kind of why I'm glad I got you kind of like on record in public saying, yeah, okay, I understand, because I know there's a lot of people who, greatly admire you and love the fact that you are out there helping people during races. And you're helping them, but they're helping you. I mean, I get that to a point too. And I'll be like, hey, I go to races and I never have a crew. I never have pacers, because I use all you as my pacers and crew at some time. And they don't sometimes believe me. In fact, I remember one classic story was the first time I did the 6 day. There's this big guy there named Steve who lives in Phoenix, and he goes out usually every year and does the 24 and does like 50 miles, but he's a big fellow, and he's out there with his wife and kids, and he showed up like on day 6 of the race, and I'm trying, to get the 300, and like early on the day, walk up and I start talking to him, and I said, I'm gonna count on you sometime later on in this race. There's gonna be a time I'm gonna come up to you, and I'm gonna need you. And he's just like, who is this guy? What the hell is he talking about? And then like later that day, later that evening, and he was trying to do 50 plus or something. And him and his wife were walking along, and I got up behind him because I was having a moment. And I just said, hey, I just need to follow you guys. Just keep talking about whatever you're talking about. I don't care. Pardon that I'm listening, but I just need that human, and they're just chattering away, talking about their kids or schools, and I just walked along behind them for like an hour just because he was in that. And you've done that so much for, and so that's why I think doing this podcast, that's what I've really liked about through the podcast. I'm not a big, really big into writing, I've got all this education. People are like, you got education, why don't you write? I'd rather talk and do these podcasts, and plus people can listen to the podcast. And and the other thing, like I know you've dabbled with the video, but I've told you, the problem with video is it's a pain in the butt to upload, and people aren't going to walk around. They're not going to drive in a car watching, well, they shouldn't be watching a YouTube video. And you have started your own sort of podcasts, and I think we'll definitely double release this, the audio of this. I'll put up the audio, Ed might put up the video. I'm never really a fan of like it's good. I mean, like, Kroll and Joe Rogan and them do it. They do put the video of their shows up, but the problem with video too is like on YouTube, you get whacked for any kind of copyright violation. Like Rogan's always having to do stuff. And then what really sucked with like YouTube was I used to get with the Spotify Anchor app that I've used and you've used for this podcast, you get some money from ad revenue. I have like a little Anchor ad that I read, and they give you some money that way. But the problem with like YouTube is I used to get some revenue there, but then they changed their rules. You have to have 10,000 subscribers to
Hmm.
monetize your videos.
Hmm.
That's for someone like me to get 10,000, you might be able to get 10,000, but for someone like me to get 10,000 people to click subscribe,
Oh.
I mean, I don't really, so I just kind of abandon it where this is, and the great thing with this podcast is, it's on Spotify and all the other major things. So yeah, so, we've got, like I said, covered some stuff, what's been going on, what the future looks like. And that's kind of what I wanted to have you come on. I think we'll definitely do some other stuff. Hopefully I didn't put you in too many uncomfortable positions.
Well, now that I put it out there that I'm going to try and go for 60 hundreds, now
Oh, now it's
I'm
60. It
oh,
was 58 to 60.
well, see, in my mind,
Well, I
here's the
know that.
problem. In my mind, I'm saying 60, but I didn't want to say it publicly.
Yeah.
But because I programmed my brain for it, it slipped out.
Oh, yeah.
60. Okay, so now I've said it. Now
Yeah.
I didn't quite want to, show my cards, but anyway. But talking about doing stuff together, like when you came up behind those people, there are times when we've shared this many times in an event where we're just together, and then there are times when we've just done loop after loop after loop, not said a single word.
Oh, yeah.
Just having that companionship of someone next to you and just in your own thought, but knowing that there's someone that's sharing the same, I don't want to call it suffering. That's too hard of a
Yeah.
word, but the struggles that you're going through at that point. And the reality is though, you're really, it's not, the competition is really yourself and the
Yeah.
clock always. And it reminded me of, and so one thing that may be good from me publicly announcing this is maybe there's somebody else out there that has been thinking about that. And now that I've kind of thrown the gauntlet down, they're going to say, you know what? All right, Ed, I'll take on that challenge. For example, when Walter, one of the benefits I think Walter had that I feel probably helped him. I'd have to talk to him directly to find this out. But there were three guys that were
Yes.
all trying to break that record of the 41. There was Michael Ortiz, Richard, the 100-mile Slayer. I remember his last name. Do you remember his?
No, I don't. I'm terrible with names.
Richard's, I don't remember. Anyway, but Richard, the 100-mile Slayer, and then of course Walter Handloser, and they were all kind of pushing each other. In fact, I'd set up to where we could all be together at one race, and the race director had said, "Yeah, I'll get you guys all in there because it's a very small race, very limited." Ancient Oaks 100 in December. Unfortunately, I didn't make it out there, but the three of them did, and so they actually all three were
Mhm.
doing a race together. At that point, they already knew that Walter had it in the bag. There was
Yeah.
no way they could catch up to him, and he did finish with the 50. But so I would love to have someone come forward and say, "All right, Ed, I'm going to try and do 60 also."
Yeah.
And have a little bit of a friendly competition going on there. In fact, the more the merrier. Let's have 10 people that are
Yeah.
all trying to do that. That would, how fun would that be? How exciting would that be for the running world too, to have something to follow that's more than just one guy going for a silly little dream? Because I mean, you think about the whole scheme of things. I mean, what's accomplished by me doing 58
Mhm.
or 60?
Yeah.
Other than, I mean, my goal is for personal, to push myself to my
Yep.
extreme limit, but also to inspire people. I hope it inspires and the next generation for someone at some point. In fact, talking about, is it pronounced Celtic or Celtic, your race?
Celtic is how we always
Okay,
say it,
Celtic.
but
Okay.
Celtic is another way they say it.
So,
Yeah.
so you a couple years back, you had a packet pickup on a Friday night, and
Mhm.
at a shoe store, you asked me to come out and be there and bring my ring of buckles, and I did. And this young guy shows up.
I reposted the photo the other day because it came up on my feed. Yeah.
Young guy shows up, really kind of buff, doesn't look really like a runner, really
Yeah.
solid and well built.
Picking
And
both our
shorter.
brains.
Yeah, and he's done a couple hundreds, and he's asking about it. No, wow, and we got our picture together. Both of us holding up my ring of buckles. At that point, I maybe had 100, 140, and he asked about the record, and I said, yeah, I said, but it's people can do it. It's not like 41 and that's it. No one's ever going to do that. I
Yep.
said, I think people can do 50, even maybe even closer to 60. Little did I know that I planted a seed in that young whippersnapper's mind. He's in
Yeah.
his mid 30s, so he's
Yeah.
about 20 years younger than me. Anyway, and then a couple of years back, I think 2 years ago, he said, "Ed, I want you to be the first to know that I'm going to go for your record." And I said, "Dude, that is so awesome. Anything I can do to help you,
Yeah.
I would love to see you." I mean, bittersweet. A part of me wanted that record to last until the day I die, so I would never see it broken. But records are made to be broken.
Yeah.
I broke it from somebody. They broke it from somebody. Walter broke it, and you know what? I'm hoping to reclaim it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm hoping if I can hit 60, I wouldn't say it couldn't be broken, because certainly it could. But I
Yeah.
would hope that, you know, it may be, instead of, how many years was it? 4 years, 5 years? Maybe it'll last 20 or 30 years. Who knows? You never know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it was 20 because he did his record last year, 2019. I think he came to Celtic in 2018, which is a race in January, which we're talking about. If everything happens, we may move it to a different school here in town, but real fun event. And but yeah, in fact, we started the Celtic when you were doing your
Yes,
record
to
quest. You
support me
you
in
needed
December.
you needed some race, and so Adam Setzer wanted to put on a race, and so we put it on in December so you could get it in 2014. But late December is not a really good time to put on a race, and so we moved it to January, and we may actually move it into a little better weather this coming time. Maybe do it like in March. We were looking kind of at the schedule, trying
What was
to.
wrong with the weather? I
Oh no,
remember
the weather
great
to me it
weather.
was great, but it would always rain the week of the race, and then well, we live in Bakersfield, so the weather gets to 50, and everybody feels like they're freezing to death, and you're like, yeah, I mean, like this year, I was out there for some dumb
Bunch of
reason.
wimps.
I was out there for some dumb reason all night and all day because like 4 or 5 people got to 100, and 4 or 5 people quit at 100K, and 4 or 5 people quit at 50. And for some dumb reason, I went to 73. So I was still 27 miles out of like fourth place, fifth place, but I beat the next place by 12, which usually when I do races, I just try and be a mile in front of people or a lap in front of them. Or like when I went to the BB Farm 48, I got third male, fourth overall by 60 yards after 48 hours. So,
Yeah, I know that
so,
story
so
is
I'm
amazing.
a little more like, and also people, and it's not because I want, I do like the competitiveness, but it brings out the best of me. Cause like, I would never gone miss the distances. And speaking of that, you were talking about like these records, of course, and I always tell you that, championships and wins and stuff are great and stuff, but you end up losing those titles. That you've got to go for these epic marks. And of course, the epic mark is, which Bob Hearn did last summer, the 506 days. So sometime that's another one of my goals for you, because there was only a dozen North Americans have done it, and now Bob Hearn is number 13. And someday I want you to get that. You might have forgotten about
Yeah,
that one, but that's another one that I would love to have you do, because the thing about that is you do 500 and people will remember you 50 years from now, because, or 100 years from now, because that list, we still talk about it. So it's another one of those. So like I said, lots of stuff going on. Right now we're all kind of in this holding pattern, and I'm glad that you are getting out and getting to do some races. Hopefully things go well with all that, and hopefully we just get out of all this craziness. And like you were saying about the virtual races and how they're not really, you can't even think of them as a race, but I think that like these really long ones like Laz's race across Tennessee or your race, because they are so long, the conditions kind of even out.
yeah.
Because right now it's 105 here. I mean, it's miserable other places, and so having these really long thousand, it's more about just the willpower to go out every day. Like I got to do 10.3 miles a day, and I started the race. I got out of the hospital on April 27th and started on May 1st, and so that first month it was taking me 4.5 hours to do 10 miles. Now I'm not so bad off, and like with your rate, your event is all the way till the end of the year. It's not like some of these things where like the backyard ultras where some people were on treadmills, some people were outdoors. And like when they did the first one, there was this one woman, she was in Sweden in the snow running her laps on a frozen lake. She made it.
Wow.
She made it to like top 5 or something. Where
Good for
meanwhile,
her.
another guy was like in his house. The Czech guy was, because Czechoslovakia was completely locked down. He ran the entire thing on a treadmill.
Hmm.
Radetic, he was a 24. He was a world class 24 guy, and then of course Michael Wardian ended up winning it. But Michael had kind of the best conditions. He was doing a 4/10 of a mile loop in his neighborhood, and he had his whole neighborhood out there, and he had great weather because it was April in Virginia. I wouldn't want to do it now, humidity, but yeah, and of course Michael Wardian, and Michael Wardian is in a lot of ways, you're kind of the extreme Michael Wardian. You know what I mean? He does, marathons on up to 50 miles, and he did, well, he won that backyard, but you're kind of doing the same thing, but but he's been able to obviously have a really good, with the sponsors and stuff. And I think that, those are possible. So anybody listening to this, Ed's easy to get a hold of me, or, get a hold of me and I'll get a hold of Ed.
Yeah.
I often say that, it shows my age, but I used to, you used to watch MASH, and you have Hawkeye and you have Radar, and I've always liked to be Radar more, kind of the behind the scenes, make the trains run on time, and Ed's more the wide-eyed Hawkeye from the
I'll
show.
take it.
And
That's a compliment. I'll wear
that's
that well.
yeah. So that's kind of, Hawkeye was a good-looking guy too. So so hopefully that will be, hopefully this can kind of kickstart something we've been trying to get going, and but now we just got to get the world to get back to normal.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, but thanks a lot, Ed. I figured out, like, kind of, we've been going on, I'm not sure how, probably pretty kind of long, but a lot of topics.
I have a timer on it, 75 minutes, believe it or not.
That's that, but like I said, Rogan gets on. I mean, you can look at his shows. He's just, well, when he has someone famous on, if he gets an hour and a half, 2 hours, like he'll have like the Tesla guy. God, I can't remember the guy that owns Tesla.
Elon Musk?
Yeah, he'll have Elon Musk, and he might only get 90 minutes out of Elon. But then some of his comedy friends, they'll be on there for 3.5 hours, and they talk just like this. Of course, they're smoking marijuana and drinking on the show.
Andy, you said you were gonna, get me something to kind of lighten up the mood, and I never got it.
But yeah, it's kind of funny because he actually got Elon Musk to smoke a joint on the show, and it caused the stock to drop. Which is another thing. Which is another thing that me and you have in common it's really weird, is neither of us drink.
Nope. I can't say I've never had a drop of, but all the liquor I've had in my life, you could fit into one wine bottle. But no, it's a decision.
It's like we both ran high school, and then
ran our first marathon in high school. My school didn't have a high school running team, but yeah, we both did our first marathon at 17. Yep.
Yeah. So then it's just kind of funny that we're both like one of the few people that don't drink in the ultra world. And I'm always like, we're the outliers more than the stories. So. And I make that message because I really want people to realize, that you can have a good time and fun, because I think at a lot of races, you definitely, people enjoy hanging out with you, and, he's stone cold sober before, during, and after. We get kind of loopy out there, of course, but
yeah,
I think
who needs artificial stimulants when all you have to do is not sleep and get hallucinations,
But I really like to, I kind of sometimes like to spread that message, because I think sometimes when I listen to a lot of these, things, they're always just talking about that aspect of the world and how people came and they're running, that those addictions, and then they have this addiction, or just, or spending so many time talking about all these great IPAs, and like, oh, I can't wait to get done with my run so I can drink. And it's more like Ed's like, he can't wait to get done with his run, because then he can sit and cheer in everybody for the rest of the day and night. And I've sat there many times waiting for the last person to come in, because I can't go home until Ed goes home for a race.
Yeah, especially if we carpool out together.
Yeah,
you're
that's
stuck.
what I mean. Yeah. When I carpool it, I don't have quite as much patience. And hopefully we may, in fact, I've on the podcast, I'm going to let you go, but Craig Simmons, who we know, he has his Thunder
September.
racing.
Yeah.
And hopefully I may go to that, and we'll definitely try and meet up and meet me here in Bakersfield, and we'll go up that one. It's up in the Sacramento
That's
area.
one of the ones I want to do for my 10 in a row.
Yeah.
That'd be like I think the 8th or 9th one. But yeah.
Well, let's close this out and kind of go over your list of, because when Rogan does, he goes, okay, so what are your socials and where are you going to be at? And the comedians always say, I'm going to be playing, Laugh Factory. So what is your tentative schedule right now?
Okay, so races I have definitely signed up for and paid for, and have transportation set up. And there's Three Sisters Ultra in Tennessee. Marysville, Tennessee. That's this weekend, and 24-hour race. And then next weekend, August 1st, Run for Dreams in Kentucky. So that's where Kentucky came into my head
Hmm.
early on. That's also a 24-hour race, and those are really those are my races, the 24,
Yeah.
48s and whatnot. And then August 8th is Southern Discomfort. It's a 30-hour race. This is in Georgia. Just the name alone tells you
Hmm.
Southern Discomfort. So
Oh yeah.
that's gonna be
I
a fun
lived in
one.
Atlanta for a while, so yeah, it's gonna be uncomfortable.
So they're back to humidity again, but you take what you get. Good thing is we're all in the same conditions, so
Yeah.
everyone's suffering equally. And then my birthday is August 15. We're all turned, and that one is Angry Owl in Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to all of them, but that one I've heard some good things
Yeah.
about,
It looks
and
beautiful, and like I said, but I was like, I can't roll it. And the women in my life were like, nah, you shouldn't go.
mm,
And there were two people who like never agree on anything. Both agreed I shouldn't go. So
yeah. So yeah, when your wife and your girlfriend agree together. No, I'm
yeah,
just teasing them. Uh,
best friend. We're both came independently. I didn't say which one, what the other said, and both of them said, nah, it's a terrible idea
yeah.
for you. Yeah, not
So
necessarily
we'll
for
we'll
you.
miss you. We'll miss you out
Yeah,
there. But so that's
yeah,
the Angry Owl 24 hour on the 15th. On the 22nd, uh, Headlands 100, which is right at the Golden Gate. I would love to go do that one,
yeah.
but still
Beautiful
there.
and hard.
What's that?
It's a beautiful race, but
Yeah,
hard.
it's at sea level, but
Deceptively
it's a
hard.
lot of up
Yeah,
and down. It's deceptively,
yeah.
you're exactly right. And so that one is August 22, and they're not sure whether that's going to happen or not. So we'll see. If not, there's one in uh, Shawnee Hills 100 in Illinois. Uh, Prefer to do the one obviously here in California, and then the last week in August, I have an opportunity to do either a 24-hour on Friday to Saturday in Ohio, or a 24-hour on Saturday. That one's called Maria Spring fundraiser, and that one's in Georgia. Uh, so Labor Day weekend, that one is it's literally a head scratcher because Nanny Goat was postponed from Memorial Weekend to Labor Day weekend, and now
Yeah.
Nanny Goat is out for Labor Day weekend. There was another 100-mile race or 24 race that I was really bummed because they're both the same weekend here in Southern California, and that was the Cirque de Griffith Park was scheduled for that weekend. That one is canceled out. So
Mhm.
I actually need to find something else, and that's a race weekend, Labor Day weekend. That's a big race weekend, but
Yeah.
because of
Well, anybody listening knows one.
COVID,
Get a hold of us and tell Ed where
definitely,
you're running. Yeah.
definitely. And then the September 12th, Mogollon Monster, which is a butt kicker. Uh, I have a couple of hundreds that I haven't got redemption for. Mogollon Monster, I've DNF'd it both times I've attempted it. So that's a tough race in Pine, Arizona. At elevation, lots of technical, lots of climbs, but September 12th, and then our friend Craig Simmons, his race, Ride to Walk, 24-hour, up in Northern California on the 19th, and then that's kind of where my schedule
Yeah.
ends. I looked for some others, and then back on the ranch October 3rd, or Born to Run. But anyway, so that's what's coming up.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. And, like, hopefully some of them races will happen. And something in California, I definitely go, but I just know I can't handle the flying. It's just not going to work. So thanks a lot, Ed, for coming on. You're like my first official guest. Me and you have done a little
Awesome.
walking along, talking into my phone kind of thing. And hopefully when we go to listen to this, it actually sounds listenable. I've heard lots of Zoom ones and they sound pretty good. So, yep, that's it. We'll just kind of end it here. As I always end my podcast with my tagline is my rules are stay healthy, be boring, not epic. And of course, what are your taglines, Ed? What is something you often say?
I always end every Zoom meeting that I do with be kind to each other, be gentle on yourself, take one step today that can change the world tomorrow, and lots of love and group hugs for everyone.
All right. Thank you, Ed. And we'll talk to you soon and we'll do some more stuff and look for something else on there on your feeds from Jester and what he's going on. So thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay.
Real honor.
Okay. Whoops. I'll edit it. Is it working? How do you do this?